What's up, everybody? I am Mark D. We are the NFL experts, and as always, joined by Wayne G. What's up, man?
What's going on? Not too much. I see it's going to be some nice weather on Thursday, which I'm looking forward to because I have my men's golf league, and nice weather means I'm going to play even better, which is already pretty exceptional, if I'm being honest. So, looking forward to it.
All right, what's the weather like up there where you're at, Wayne?
It's 80 today, but it's supposed to be 70 and sunny on Thursday.
All right. It sounds like perfect golfing weather. Okay, so if you like what you hear tonight, give us a follow on all of our social medias. We are on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Gmail. And tonight we have a special guest host, my buddy. Let me give him his proper intro. This is James Merilatt. Has been covering Denver sports for more than 20 years. He's the founder of Mile High Sports Magazine. He's worked in print, radio, and online. He spent most of his time working for the Denver Broncos and the Colorado Mammoth, and most importantly, my friend James Merilatt.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate it. Because I've been trying to get you on for my actual podcast. James was kind of there from the beginning with me when I was just me solo, just doing my thing, trying to get my voice out there. And this is where I'm at now, James. I hope you're proud.
Yeah, man, this is great. Normally, it's you and me chatting at the King Supers in Erie,
yes.
Trying to people that are going in and out of the deli. So this is nice. This is fancy. Stepping it up.
Yeah.
You got Wayne, talking about his golf game, and I root for bad weather, then I have a reason to blame, or I have something to blame my bad shots on. So Wayne and I come at that a different way.
Yeah, so I hate bad weather. I think we should let people know too. You're not a Chris Pratt impersonator, right?
No. I get when I coach my son's football team. I get the Sean McVay every once in a while. I think it's
I can see that one for sure.
But it's just my built-in Halloween costume.
Oh, perfect.
All right, so we're just going to shoot right into it, James. We've already kind of talked about it in previous episodes, but I'd like to hear your opinions on it. First topic, thoughts on the Broncos draft class?
I mean, I think for the most part it was fine. I think it ultimately is going to be determined, though, on what Bo Nix turns out to be. If he's a franchise quarterback, it's going to be a great draft class. If he's not, I think barring a Terrell Davis in the 6th round or a Shannon Sharp in the 7th round, I think it's going to be looked back on as just a bad draft, as a total miss. Do they have some guys in there that can contribute and be, starters for this team for 4, 5, 6 years? Probably. Do they have some people I'm intrigued to see? Yeah, but do I think there are any stars outside of the 12th overall pick? I don't. So I think it all comes down to that. No, not to oversimplify it, but if Bo Nix is a bust, how good does everybody else have to be to make up for that just colossal whiff at that point? So I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to play wait and see. When I hear Sean Payton come out after the first practice that anybody gets to watch and say, I don't want to use the word boring to describe Bo Nix. It's like, oh my gosh. Somebody said
he did do that.
He said that to you about a movie. Would you run to the box office and buy tickets? So it's it's a concern.
Good point, man. I wouldn't even have
is
thought of that.
Is there a more boring quarterback than Tom Brady, though? So, I mean, boring can be good if he's talking about – I mean, Bo Nix in college was the guy with the check down guy, right? So what's more boring than check downs?
Yeah, it's just, we've watched bad and boring. So, listen, if he turns out to be Tom Brady boring, okay. Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns in one season, too. So when Tom Brady has weapons, he's not boring. When he's asked to be boring, he can be. So we'll see. Listen, if he turns out to be Tom Brady, it's the best draft class in the history of the franchise. If he turns out to be Trevor Siemian type boring,
don't say that, James.
there are two extremes of boring, right? So, and it kind of depends on where you're coming at it from too. Sometimes boring is exactly what you need, but boring to me is a good bridge quarterback, a good short-term solution. That chaos and nothing's up people. It's like, man, I just want boring, right? If you've been on a bunch of roller coasters in a row, you probably just want to go on the people mover. Just calm down a little bit. Let the stomach settle. Do you want to ride the people mover for the next 10 years? Probably not. So, I guess it's all dependent on what everybody's cup of tea is.
Well, when you say boring, when he said boring, I kept trying to think the Drew Brees offense, and that offense wasn't that super exciting either. So maybe that's just not his style,
Well, I mean, you're right. It depends on. We're talking about semantics, right? It depends on what we're looking at with boring. I mean, Drew Brees retired as the all-time leading passer in the league, so they're chucking it all over the yard. They're throwing it downfield. He wasn't particularly good his last year because he couldn't throw it beyond about 20 yards. So when you took away that element, it was not very effective. If it's that kind of boring and he's just efficient and he's not running around making plays off schedule and throwing no-look passes like Mahomes, it's like, okay, I can live with that kind of boring. If it's a bunch of throws on 3rd and 7 short of the sticks, and hey, here comes Riley Dixon for another punt, that's not the boring I want. Like you have to be able to make throws when things are off schedule. And I don't mean on any given play. I mean as the drive goes on, right? So like how many times are you going to be able to have the perfect 12-play, 80-yard touchdown drive? You don't have a bobbled snap, a running back that slips, a holding penalty, something that puts you behind the sticks. You got to be able to make up for it. Teams that win consistently on Sundays have a quarterback who can convert on 3rd and 8. Any quarterback can convert on 3rd and 3, right? Like they don't know if you're running or passing. 3rd and 8, they know you're going to throw the ball. Can you throw it into the teeth of the defense and move the chains? That's the part of it that to me isn't boring. We'll see if he's able to do it.
Like you said, the first thing you said about it being very efficient and him not going crazy, I'd be totally okay with that kind of boring. That's kind of the boring I'm picturing seeing next year. I hope. To God, I hope. But as you talk, James, you don't seem super confident in Bo Nix. So my next topic would be: is he the future QB, and does he start right away?
I don't know why he wouldn't start right away, right? I mean, Zach Wilson, I thought would have been an intriguing option if you didn't spend the 12th overall pick on a quarterback. But when you do that and you take a guy who's 24 years old, like, let's get him out there. Let's see where he's going. Zach Wilson's not taking this team to the playoffs. Jarrett Stidham's not taking this team to the playoffs. So just play the kid, right? Does it matter if they go 6-11 instead of 4-13? Not at all. Let him get the growing pains out of the way. It's going to be a bad season anyway. It's kind of a wash with all the Russell Wilson dead cap. So just go get the kid experience. Let him learn on the job. I'm a believer you don't learn much holding the clipboard. So I would say just start him right away. Do I think he's the face of the franchise moving forward? He better be, or it's a miss. If you made me bet, I think there's a better chance they're drafting a quarterback in the first round next year again than he turns into a franchise quarterback. I don't see it. He was the 6th quarterback pick, right? People I get it. He went number 12, but unless this class is better than the class of 1983, which was the last time 6 quarterbacks went in the first round, and number 6 wasn't until Dan Marino in 27. So unless this is the historically greatest quarterback class of all time in the NFL, I think it's an unbelievable reach, and I think it's unlikely he took it. Typically, the 6th quarterback off the board is a journeyman at best. We'll see if this one's different. I think there are reasons to be doubtful.
See, I do think
Okay,
this could
so
be the best quarterback class in the history of the NFL. Only because I look at each guy individually of his own merits. Now, obviously, we don't know. They could be the worst class in the NFL. We don't know. But based on what they all bring to the table, I think that this could be the best class. And as far as I do think Zach Wilson could start the majority of the season personally, and I would start him. That's just my styles. I do like rookie quarterbacks sitting for a year or almost a year. Mahomes sat until the very last game of the season. Jordan Love sat for 2 years. I love that Penix is going to sit for 2 years before he gets a chance to play. I really think it helps you learn the playbook so that when you do go in there, you don't have to run 8 plays. You can run the entire playbook.
Yeah, but
And see when
Jordan Love sat behind, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers. Patrick Mahomes for a playoff team, and he only played the last game of the year against the Broncos because they'd already clinched the playoffs because Alex Smith, a former number 1 overall pick, was the quarterback. Alex Smith isn't going to the Hall of Fame like Favre and Rodgers, but he's a hell of a lot better than Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson, right? Like, most of the places and most of the quarterbacks that are out there that you look at now are like, okay, that's an elite quarterback. Josh Allen played as a rookie. Deshaun. The funniest one to me was Bill O'Brien going through all of off-season stuff, all of training camp, all of preseason, and he's not going to start Deshaun Watson in the opener. They score like 3 points in the first half of the first game. He yanks whoever the starter was, some journeyman du jour. And he puts in Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson was a heck of a lot better. Listen, if Russell Wilson was still here and you want to sit behind him, I get it. I think it just has to be a quarterback out there that can lead you somewhere, can lead you to the playoffs. You're not going to give away a playoff season to play a rookie. Jarrett Stidham ain't taking him anywhere. Zach Wilson ain't taking him anywhere. That's why I would just play the kid. They don't have anybody in front of them that gives them any better chance to win, in my opinion.
I'm with you, James. I think that he should start right away, but I think Sean Payton is so freaking arrogant in his ways. He thinks that his offense is so complicated, which it might be. I don't know necessarily, but I don't see him starting right away. Maybe after week 3 or 4. Like, I feel like Sean's got to see something more control. Like, maybe he will show him. I don't know, but I just feel like Sean Payton's not the type that's going to let him just start right away. He's going to play Stidham probably 3 or 4 games and then maybe trot him out there. That's kind of my thought.
That very well could turn out to be the case. And that's, probably the more likely scenario than not. I also think it's a matter of Sean Payton's reputation and legacy is on the line with this pick. Let's be honest, there's not a lot of great talent surrounding whoever's playing quarterback. So if you're Sean Payton and you go through mini camps and you go through training camp and you go through the preseason, you're like, man, I don't know who would succeed with this batch of B- receivers and D- tight ends and C+ running backs. So might as well not have the kid take all the losses. Might as well have Jarrett Stidham take all the losses. Maybe he can keep, he can be, let's make a deal. And behind door number 2, he still has the rookie quarterback or the young quarterback to go to, and he still has another card to play. Maybe if you think it's going to be ugly no matter what, maybe you just prefer the young kid doesn't take the lumps. But I think that's more of a giving yourself an out than probably what's better for the kid.
Right. So, James, I'm glad you mentioned Russ before we got onto that. I was very pro Russ early on. I've kind of changed my thoughts on that. Wayne is the person who pretty much called me out on it because I just changed my opinion. Like, people are allowed to change their minds, right? I changed my mind. So, Wayne, tell them a little about why this is even a topic right now.
Well, I don't like the smear campaigns that come out after these players leave teams. It happened with Cam Newton in New England when Mac Jones took over. Cam Newton couldn't read the playbook. He had to have Mac Jones read it to him. All this stuff came out after he left. Russell Wilson leaves Denver, and we got Aditi Kinkhabwala comes out with a report saying that, he couldn't understand the language and that they had to give him the note card on the arm and he couldn't call the plays. Well, what I loved was that, Broncos country tonight, a 94.1 out there in Colorado, they said this is the dumbest take. They said, Russell Wilson had his best season of his career under Brian Schottenheimer, who's legendary for long, verbose play calls. And so the idea that like the smear campaign came out after Russell Wilson left, I was very turned off by it. Mark loved it because now he hates Russell Wilson for some reason. But I thought it was just stupid. I don't know what your thoughts are. If you believe, CBS Sportsline, or if you believe the Denver guys.
I'm with you, Wayne. I hate the smear campaign after, right? And I think you see this a lot with, especially the local media. The example that always sticks in my craw is when Jack Del Rio was the defensive coordinator, and nobody said anything negative about Jack Del Rio. Nothing, right? He even came in and coached a little bit when John Fox had the heart problem and had to miss like 3 or 4 games. Jack Del Rio was the interim head coach. Nobody said anything negative about him. Then he leaves. In fact, they all loved all the videos he used to show. And then as soon as he leaves, they all start ripping the shark videos and the lion videos and everything. It's like, why didn't you say that a month ago? Why didn't you say that a year ago? Like, you're changing your tune now that the guy's out the door and you're not trying to be his buddy. So I'm with you, Wayne. I think the story should come out when the guy's here. I think the opinions shouldn't change whether he's in a Broncos jersey or not in a Broncos jersey. Do I think there's some truth to that stuff? Yeah, I do. Do I think in Seattle they had to tailor make things for Russell Wilson that he could execute? Yeah, but you know what? He's not the first quarterback, and he won't be the last. That's what you have to do. So it's a philosophical question, right? I mean, Sean Payton calls a play on 4th and 2 when they go for it up in Buffalo, thinking it's going to be zone and it was man, or thinking it was going to be man, it was going to be zone, whatever. He didn't get the look he wanted. Russell Wilson spins out of the back of the pocket, makes an amazing throw to Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton makes an even more amazing catch, and it's a touchdown instead of a sack. Okay. You get that from Russell Wilson. You also get him spinning out of plays he shouldn't spin out of, and it turns into a sack. Like, you kind of got to decide what you want. Sean Payton wants boring. All right, well, boring's going to on 4th and 2 when you guess wrong as the coach. It's a turnover on downs, and the Bills are going the other way. So I'm a guy that I'd rather coach to my talent. I'd rather coach to my roster rather than get a roster that fits my system. Because I don't think there's any system that's so great. I still think it's the Jimmys and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. So, I think it's a very convenient thing that now that Sean Payton has decided to move on from Russell Wilson, all these stories come out, and they're just building an excuse. If he goes to Pittsburgh and falls flat on his face, you won't hear any more of these stories. If he goes to Pittsburgh and he's successful and takes the Steelers to the playoffs, you'll start hearing all these things of why it didn't work in Denver with Russ, and it'll have nothing to do with on the field. It'll be off the field stuff. It'll be Sierra distractions. It'll be stuff about the office upstairs. It'll be all that kind of nonsense. So it's nothing but a spin job. It's nothing but CYA. I don't buy any of that stuff. Every player in the league has pluses and minuses. You coach your talent, coach your roster, not the other way around.
Okay, well, I got to defend myself just a little bit. Okay, so my opinions basically kind of just began and builded over the season. But ultimately, I think Russ was screwed from the get. Because, this, James, the Broncos wanted Aaron Rodgers. That's the whole reason why they hired Daniel Hackett. And there's no other reason why they'd hire that dumbass to lure him here. It didn't work. Our backup plan was Russ. So, that's kind of how he was screwed from the get. We didn't even really truly want him. We wanted Rodgers. So we were like, oh, we'll take you. So he comes here. He's trying to be a good soldier and trying to be, trying to deal with this offense. But it was an offense he couldn't handle. Then we get Sean Payton. And my theory is, I've told you this time many times, James, I have a theory that we tried to get DeMeco Ryans. We tried to get Jim Harbaugh. And I think that both of those guys were like, I don't want to deal with Russ. I'd rather have a different quarterback. I don't want to deal with that guy for whatever reason. But they didn't want him. And Sean Payton was the only one that was like, you know what, I'll give it a try. Even though deep down he probably was like, I know this isn't going to work. So he gave it a try. He gave it a good old college try, as they say. And it turned out as it did. So not necessarily, I'm not trying to bash Russ in any way, but I just think that it was never the right fit with Sean Payton. If Sean Payton's our coach and he's the future, we got to ride with him because that's the way that the franchise has decided to go. So my allegiance is with the team always, so I got to ride with that.
Well, look, Did those two coaches not want the job because of Russ? Maybe. I don't know. We don't have any evidence that they did. We don't have any evidence that
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't.
pure speculation.
I mean, to me, D'Amico Ryans wanted to go to Houston because that's where he played. That's where his wife is from. That's where his family is. If the money's pretty even, they have, the first and second pick in the draft, or second and third, or whatever it was. I think it was second and third. And you can get CJ Stroud, you can get Will Anderson. It's like, okay, that's tempting. And if you're Jim Harbaugh, your alma mater, you've got unfinished business. You want to go win a national championship. He does that, and then he's ready to return to the NFL. So, Jim Harbaugh the year before flirted with the Vikings. Did he not go to the Vikings because he didn't want to coach Kirk Cousins? Maybe. Or did he just feel like he had unfinished business in Minnesota? I think Sean Payton took this job because they gave him 90 million reasons to take it, and nobody else was banging down his door giving him an offer. Sean Payton interviewed with a lot of teams. He interviewed in Carolina. He interviewed in Arizona. He interviewed all over the place, and the only people that offered him a job was Denver, and they offered him a boatload of money to do it. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think to some extent Russ was screwed from the get-go, but it's more about the trade and the contract, right? Like, you have all those draft picks, those players, and that money, expectations are through the roof. And going back to what Wayne was talking about of things, the narrative changing after the fact. I said before the opening game last year, and it was when they cut Alberto, and I don't think Alberto's a great player or a good player by any means. But I'm like, good grief, how many blocking tight ends do you need? At some point, you got to give your quarterback some weapons, and they don't have any. And then as soon as it's Jarrett Stidham out there having the exact same results, it's like, well, geez, I don't have much to work with. I'm like, well, neither did Russ. Like, who's going to make Gary Judy and Cortland Sutton look like they're all world? They have the most expensive wide receiver room in the league. They've got one Pro Bowl before COVID and before he tore up his ACL. They've got a running back coming off of a major knee injury. They have, not arguably, but statistically, the worst tight end room in the league. It's like, okay, I don't know exactly what Russ could have done. Like, could Patrick Mahomes have more success with that roster? Sure. Could Josh Allen, because he could basically be the running game? Sure. But the number of guys who could have been really good with Adam Trout, Ajay Pepine, and Marvin Mims, I can count on one hand. So I think that set Russ up for failure more than, if nobody wanted to work with him and nobody wanted to coach him. But look, we're going to get the tie. He was the tiebreaker. He was really successful in Seattle. He was not very good in Denver, wins and loss-wise. Stats were actually pretty good, but wins and loss-wise, he wasn't very good. He goes to Pittsburgh and he stinks, well, then he's cooked. If he goes to Pittsburgh and he leads them to the playoffs and they go 12-5, well, then it was a Denver problem. So the beauty of it is the NFL is it's results business, and we're about to get the answer. Because at some point, if you keep failing in multiple places, it's a you problem, not a coach.
Wayne, your thoughts?
No, that's what I agree. And like I said, the reason that we brought it up is because of your 180, which your 180 happened within the span of about 45 days, where you went from, Russell Wilson got shafted by Sean Payton. Sean Payton's going to ruin this franchise. To really 45 days later, it's Sean Payton is the future, and I hope Russell Wilson falls flat on his face. I just couldn't believe how harsh that turn was in such a short period of time.
Look, I hope Mark's right that Sean Payton's the answer. But think about if Daniel Hackett had done the things that Sean Payton did, where he admitted that he called the wrong play because he didn't have on his glasses and couldn't get his play sheet. He called the timeout heading into a fourth down before punting for the Chiefs at the end of the first half to stop the clock and allow the Chiefs to have time to go down and get a field goal before half. Admitted in the post-game or postseason press conference that it was on he and his coaches for not getting Marvin Mims more involved. Right? And the list goes on and on. That's just off the top of my head. There was a blunder a week. But because he's Sean Payton and because he won a Super Bowl 15 years ago and because he called an onside kick coming out of halftime in that game and it worked, he gets a complete free pass. I mean, coach, if they got 70 hung on him, the most points since 1966, basically gets no criticism. The faith in Sean Payton based on what we've seen in Denver is completely misplaced. The faith in Sean Payton based on what he used to be, okay, I get it, but at one point Burt Reynolds was the biggest box office star in America. You couldn't have put that guy in a movie in the 90s, so we'll see.
Well, you guys, like I said, I think for me, I just don't really want Sean Payton and Russ to be added to another blunder for this team. I'm just like, I just don't want that. So I'm trying to be positive. I'm like, in God, hoping that Sean Payton changes things around, because if not, this is another disaster, and that's what I don't want.
I hope you're right too. I want nothing more than to be wrong. I don't know what Wayne's allegiance is. It looks like he's got
Patriots
behind him. So he probably doesn't care if you're wrong. Listen, look at all this stuff behind me. I hope that I'm wrong and you're right, Mark. I'm just, my job is to call it like I see it and to be honest about it. And that's what I see. That's what I've witnessed during his 1 year here. Look, he also inherited a dumpster fire. And it wasn't just the quarterback. It was a team with terrible culture, a team with bad leaders. And I think to some extent they had to take a step backward before they could go forward. Is Justin Simmons a good player? Was he part of the problem? Good player, probably not part of the problem, but he's been part of nothing but losing since he's been here. Jerry Jeudy the same way. Kareem Jackson the same way. Like at some point, you just got to purge yourself of all the stuff that's associated with nothing but losing. They haven't got rid of Garrett Bowles yet because finding a left tackle isn't as simple as people think. But, he had to take a little bit of a step backward and get rid of some of that stuff. But, man, he gets a free pass in this town. He buys the media ice cream, and it's like they're a bunch of 9-year-olds. They're just all, oh, thanks, Sean. Won't say anything bad about you now. Thanks for the rocky road.
And James, I respect that you shoot from the hip and you tell it like it is, and that's why I wanted you on. I wanted to hear everything you said, because in a way you've sort of convinced me. But like I said, I'm just gonna be hopeful, and I'm just gonna hope for the best. So, because that's all I can do. Because we've been a dumpster fire for 7 years, and I'm just over it.
Listen, man, I'm over it too. I'm 50 years old, and this is the longest stretch of bad football they've had in my lifetime. So I'm completely over it too. Do I think they have? I think for the most part, the three most important parts of any franchise are the owner, the head coach, and the quarterback. It's an oversimplification to say the other 52 guys are interchangeable. I think by and large, it's who do you give your top 10 contracts to, and the other 43 are kind of interchangeable. But owner, coach, quarterback, I think they got the right owner. He's the richest owner in the league by a long shot. They can spend money. They can do whatever they want. I do think he wants to win. I don't know if they have the right head coach. I don't know if they have the right quarterback. So we'll see.
Okay. Going into that, what's your predictions for primetime games? Do we get any? Do we get just the general Amazon game? What do you think, James?
I think they get it. Well, they'll get the Amazon game. I think the question was whether or not Pittsburgh at Denver just gets put into one of those slots, or does that turn into kind of like Russ's return to Seattle 2 years ago, that was the opening Monday night game? Do they put that game early in the season on a Monday night, trying to make sure Russ is still playing in Pittsburgh? Both those teams are at least still interesting. If you put that game in week 14, Lord only knows what the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh becomes, and who knows what the Broncos record is. So I think that's about the only game you got a chance to get primetime, other than, the networks like to have the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes on there as much as possible. So maybe you get the home game against the Chiefs in the hope that would be competitive, put into primetime. But I think you're going to get one, maybe two, if you made me guess.
No, I like that you went that route, because I actually have 4 primetime games. When Mark asked me to do this, I said, obviously the Amazon game. I was like, who's another crappy team that we can put against them in the Amazon game? That's going to be the Raiders. Raiders and Broncos, Amazon, because it's a rivalry. That's how they're going to sell it. But we all know it's going to be a garbage game. So that's going to be the Amazon game. And then we're going to have Broncos at KC. I have, just because, like you said, Mahomes, got to get Mahomes on television. I have the Steelers and the Broncos because Russ versus the Broncos. And then, of course, likewise, Broncos at the Saints, Sean Payton going back to New Orleans.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I didn't have, and I should have known this because we've been talking about it for months, and we've been working on stories that we're getting ready to post tomorrow and all the rest of that. And one of them I'm writing is the best road trip. So I always like to go through the schedule when it comes out and try and pair a Broncos road game with a good college game that's nearby, right? So New Orleans is one that's on the list of, if you can go down there and watch the Broncos and the Saints on a Sunday, but on Saturday you were up in Baton Rouge and Death Valley watching LSU, that's a heck of a football weekend. So that's one I should have had on my radar. That has the chance of being a primetime game for sure with his return down there. That's got a Monday nighter written all over it. Maybe Thursday night, because honestly, neither of those teams are that intriguing from like they're a contender standpoint. They're both, hoping to be 9-8. But that's an interesting matchup. That's one that there's a storyline to sell, and that's what the networks are always trying to do when it comes to primetime.
Okay, so you guys literally stole two of mine. James stole Pittsburgh, Denver, which was one of mine. Wayne stole Denver at New Orleans, which was also one of mine. But I guess the one I'm going to throw out there that you guys didn't think about, Denver at the Jets. Maybe early in the year, or maybe see Aaron Rodgers. We didn't get to see him last year. I went to that game. It was an awful game. So maybe they pump that up because it's Rodgers. I don't know. That would be my thought.
Maybe. I mean, if the Broncos hadn't drafted Nix and it was going to be Zach Wilson, that adds to that matchup. The Hackett-Peyton thing, does that still become a story?
Yes.
Right? And look, it was a bad game from a Bronco outcome standpoint, but I think that game was like 30-20 or something like that, 31-21. Came down to the Broncos had the ball at the end, chance to go down and tie it with the field goal. Russ fumbles, it gets returned the other way. It was actually like the best Jets offensive game all year long. There was a lot of kind of animosity to it. You could tell there was plenty of bad blood. The Jets sort of rallied the troops and circled the wagons around Hackett. So, is there a chance that happens a second time? I think less than Hackett's return to Denver, but maybe. I mean, Sean Payton will get booed mercilessly in New York without a doubt.
But with the game being in New York, I do have to wonder if, the whole Zach Wilson thing, like you said, we all talk about the conspiracy theories and the NFL script is like the WWE. So could the NFL put that game in the first quarter of the season, then go to Denver and say, listen, you got to start Zach Wilson for the first 4 games because we have this primetime game. That's how we're going to sell it. Again, if you believe in the conspiracy theory of the script.
Boy, that would add to it. If you're going to try to make that an intriguing game, whether you believe in the tinfoil hat or not, Wayne, if you're going to try and make that an intriguing game, it's got to be in the first month of the season, right? Because after that, listen, I think
totally agree.
If Rodgers stays healthy, could be pretty good. But if that game's week 12, that has a chance of being 2-9 versus 3-8. And it's Bo Nix against whoever the backup is in New York this year. So, there's other games. I mean, they play Cleveland. I don't think the Jerry Jeudy storyline is enough. At Seattle, a bunch of former Broncos and guys the Broncos could have drafted, but I don't think that's a good enough storyline. At Tampa, not really. So I think it's Pittsburgh. It's the 2 division teams that are interesting, the Raiders and the Chiefs. It's New Orleans. And then it's maybe the Jets. Cincinnati's a good team. Baltimore's a good team. But those have the potential to just be boat races on the road.
Vegas has us at 5.5 games. What's your prediction for over or under wins, James?
Boy, I think it's a good number because I got to think about it. Let's go back 20 minutes ago, the things I said about Sean Payton. I do still think Sean Payton's a pretty good coach. Do I think they're going to go 5-12 or worse? I don't. So I would take the over. Do I think they eke past it with a week 18 win over the Raiders or somebody in a meaningless game? Maybe. I think this is a 6 or 7 win team. I don't think they're under double-digit losses. So they're 6-11, 7-10. Either way, that's the over. But man, Mark, that's going to be close.
Mike.
I agree with you, James. What's your prediction, Wayno?
Well, as I told you, I said 5.5 was a great number, and you got mad at me for saying that. But I said that is a pretty fair number because I was comparing them to the Patriots, who I think are also like a 5.5 type of game team. And I don't know about over and under. Mark is actually taking bets at 7.5 over and under. So if he got some money, that's what he's landed on. I think I would take the under there. But if I had to go over under 5.5 on the Broncos, I'm probably going to take the under. I think it makes sense for them to have another year where they can get a top 5 pick. Not that they would lose on purpose, quote unquote, but that just makes sense in rebuilding.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like if Wayne and Mark, if the number was 6.5, I quite literally would flip a coin. Because I don't know. 5.5, I'm optimistic enough to think they can win 6 games. But do I think this team's drafted in the top 10 next year? I do. Do I think there's a chance they're drafted in the top 5? I do. Do I think there's a chance that Bo Nix is Josh Rosen and Shadur Sanders is Kyler Murray? I do.
We have about 10 minutes left with James. Wayne really wants to get into the Zeke Terrell Davis debate, so I think we should get to that. I had some more questions for you, James, but we can skip that for now because I do plan on having you back on if you're willing. Okay, so there's a social media meme that's out that puts out all these numbers and says because Terrell Davis is a Hall of Famer, should Zeke Elliott be a Hall of Famer? Before I even say my argument, I'm going to let you go first, James. Please.
Well, it's interesting because Terrell Davis, when you look at his overall stats and you look at his career, everybody talks about 7 years. It really wasn't 7 years, right? It was 4. It was 95, 96, 97, 98. After that, after he tore up his knee 4 games into 99, he came back. He was never himself. It really was a 4-year stretch. But during that 4-year stretch, for at least 3 of them, he was the best back in football. The year he rushed for 2,000 yards, he won league MVP, helped the Broncos nearly go undefeated, led them to 2 Super Bowls. They won back-to-back Super Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP. In 8 playoff games, he rushed for more than 1,100 yards. If you extrapolated 8 playoff games over a 16-game season, it would be the greatest rushing season in the history of the league. And he did it on the biggest stage against the best teams, right? That's not padding your stats against bad teams at that point. And the year he rushed for 2,000 yards, he sat out like 8 fourth quarters. I mean, it was ridiculous how good that team was. So Zeke Elliott was a really good back, especially in his prime. He was really, really good. Was he ever the best back in football? I don't think so. To me, he's a little bit more of like Jerome Bettis of just, amassing stats just by the fact that he was the workhorse back, which there's something to be said for that, but didn't have the postseason success. Certainly doesn't have an MVP to his name, doesn't have a Super Bowl MVP to his name. I think the 4-year run, and that's the debate with TD, like, can you get in just based on 4 great years? He did. The 4-year run of TD's prime before he got hurt, Zeke can't touch. And the postseason numbers, Zeke can't even dream about those.
Okay, Wayne, let's hear it, bro.
Well, as I told you when you showed me this statistic, what Mark did is Mark showed me the meme and it said, if Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame, does Ezekiel Elliott deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? And I said, that's a good argument. And Mark sent me like 8 angry faces. And I said, well, Terrell Davis might be the worst running back in the NFL Hall of Fame. I mean, I told him, I said, he got in on 4 years. That's what I told you, Mark, in the text. I said, it's a 4-year career that he got in on. And that's it. So if we're going to look at a 4-year career, why isn't CJ2K in the Hall of Fame? Not only did he have a 2,000-yard season, but he also had, I think, 5 other 1,000-yard seasons. So that's a guy who I think could be in there. As when you look at the total career rushing yards for Terrell Davis, you know who has more than him? D'Angelo Williams, Willis McGahee, Maurice Jones-Drew. They also have more touchdowns than he does. So do all of them belong in there? And guess who else? Zeke Elliott, more touchdowns and more rushing yards. So for me, I looked at it from the standpoint, I know he had great postseason success, but just looking at the career numbers, I feel like he's really the bottom bar. You can't go any lower than Terrell Davis and letting in running backs.
Yeah, to me, it's not the Hall of Longevity, right? Like, I don't think Jerome Bettis should be in there. Jerome Bettis never was the best back in football. He's like the 8th leading rusher in the history of the league. I don't think Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer. I never one time in my life, in the 2 decades that Frank Gore played, said, man, I got to be home in time to watch the Niners. I got to see Frank Gore play, right? Like, he just wasn't that guy. So, yeah, in terms of in career stats, is TD the worst running back in the Hall of Fame? Sure. In terms of a 4-year stretch of greatness, he's arguably the best. So those other guys, C2K or whatever, like, yeah, he had a good couple of years, but what did he do in the postseason? Does he have an MVP? Does he have a Super Bowl MVP? Did he have, 1,100 yards in 8 postseason games? All those kind of things. Did he go 7-1 in the playoffs, and mostly on his back? So unless somebody can come up with a 4-year stretch as good as TD's, plus a postseason stretch as good as TD's, then to me it's a moot point. Nobody in their right mind would ever take Willis McGahee over Terrell Davis, both of them in their primes. Nobody, not a GM alive would ever do that.
But they might take CJ2K over.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. And that's not a bad one, because that's a guy. Here's the other thing about it, Wayne, and I think that's a good example of, were they game changers, and were they players that you wanted to tune in to watch, and that opposing defensive coordinators, or if it's a defensive player, opposing offensive coordinators lied awake at night going, what the hell are we going to do to stop that guy? Right? So CJ2K, yeah, they did. That guy's speed, that guy's game-breaking ability, all of a sudden you could have the field flipped and it's an 85-yard touchdown run going the other way. I think he's a viable candidate to put into that conversation, because he's a game changer. It was Von Miller after Super Bowl 50. He's played since then, had amassed some more stats, won another Super Bowl with the Rams. I think after Super Bowl 50, you could have said that guy doesn't need to play another down to go into the Hall of Fame. He, wreaked havoc for 5 or 6 years. He won a Super Bowl MVP. He was part of one of the best defenses in the 2000s. And he was certainly a guy that offensive coordinators said, how in the hell are we going to help out our tackle enough to keep that guy from just killing our quarterback all day on Sunday? So that's where it comes into, you can't just look at the numbers. It's, did we all watch him play? And we're all old enough. We've seen all those guys play that you mentioned, Wayne. Yeah, Chris Johnson, great player. I'm not going to hold his lack of postseason success against him, because he played in Tennessee. And, man, if there's ever a franchise that's like watching paint dry year in and year out, it's the Titans. But he qualifies from does he hit those other standards? You tune in and watch him play? Sure. Does he worry opposing defensive coordinators? Sure. So I put him in there. I'm not putting Willis McGahee there. I'm not putting a lot of those other guys you mentioned, though. And I'm not putting Zeke. And I think Zeke was better than McGahee and some of those guys. But I just don't think Zeke was a guy that was that dominant. I really don't.
And I think that if you put that scale out there with the excitement versus the longevity, like you said, you don't want to do just longevity, you don't want to do just excitement. Otherwise, we got Bo Jackson in the Hall of Fame, right? Otherwise, we got Frank Gore in the Hall of Fame. But I think, Curtis Martin's a perfect example. Nobody wanted to watch Curtis Martin play, but he's got a yellow jacket.
Yeah, and I think Curtis Martin's pretty close to Jerome Bettis for me. I think he was better. I think he was more of a game breaker. But similar, I had this argument with Tom Nalen all the time. And he blocked for Terrell Davis, and he thought Curtis Martin should go in there. He's a Boston guy, so he was definitely biased. But Curtis Martin was never the best back in the league, ever. But for a long time, he was the top 3, top 5 guy. So, yeah, that's why it's a committee. That's why it's decided by people. That's why it's decided by people who, watch all these guys play, and it's not just a algorithm or it's AI looking at the numbers. I think for the most part, we all kind of know it when we see it, right? And to me, Terrell Davis was a no-doubter. I think Zeke's on the fringe, and it's a no with Frank Gore and Willis McGahee. He's better than Willis McGahee. I think Curtis Martin's on the fringe, and he's a yes. I think Jerome Bettis is on the fringe and should have been a no.
Okay, so the one thing that I don't like, and I think this is a lot of reason why Terrell took so long to get in, because I think he would have got in sooner. And I think a lot of the reason he didn't get in is because they kept saying it was Shanahan's system. Every running back that came after him also ran for a bunch of yards, and nobody gave him the credit for him being special because he was special, and I didn't like that. Did they put that on him? Like, oh, he was like, it was the offense. He was hurt. Like, he has all these things against him, but he was still in. And like I argue with Wayne all the time, postseason success means a lot to Hall of Fame voters. It does. It's just how it is. Everybody wants to see winners, you know?
It takes all of it, right? Like, John Elway didn't win a Super Bowl without Mike Shanahan. Mike Shanahan didn't win anything without John Elway. It takes both of them. Did Terrell Davis benefit from going to the perfect place? Yeah, he did. He was the perfect back for that system. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback in the history of the league by a mile. If he gets drafted by the Browns, who knows if he ever plays, right? They might have been too dumb to give a 6th-round pick a look and cut him after training camp, and you never would have seen him, he never would have gotten a chance. So situation's part of it, but Mark Schlereth hosts the morning show at the Fan, and I've heard him say a lot of times, hey, you could plug in Orlando Scary and he'd rush for 1,100 yards. He's like, man, I blocked for both of those guys. When Orlando Scary rushed for 1,100, TD would have rushed for 1,800. The only guy that was close in Shanahan's system to TD, and it was pretty close, was Clinton Portis. Clinton Portis, for the 2 years he was in that system, was unbelievable because he had more breakaway speed than Terrell Davis. I think if Clinton Portis doesn't get traded for Champ Bailey and he stays in Denver and plays for Mike Shanahan, he's wearing a gold jacket too.
I really wanted to call Terrell Davis Mike Anderson 1.0 just to see how Mark would react.
It's a good reference. It's a good deep pull.
I'll pull a deep pull. Gale Sayers. That's a lot of the reason why TD got in. It was because of Gale Sayers.
That's right. That's right. Kansas Comet.
But thank you, James. This was a pleasure. Like I said, I'm really glad that you came on my new up and dated podcast. It's not at King Supers in the deli. I'm actually up and coming, and you came on. I appreciate it. You had some awesome things to say. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem, man. Proud to see where you've gotten it. Best of luck with it. Continued success. Wayne, it's nice meeting you. I don't like that background behind you, but other than that, you seem like a good dude.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I loved having you on the show. Maybe next time I'll have my 6 banners behind me.
Sounds good. See you guys.
Take it easy, James.
All right. Awesome to have James on here talking some Broncos and talking some sense into you. I mean, shame on you for being all emotional about the Broncos.
I'm a homer. We talked about this off air, Wayne. I'm a homer, man. I guess I just flipped to my homerness. I don't know.
I know we got some more.
All right, so we had some more topics. The big news out in the NFL: Jared Goff just got paid, and I think it's deservingly so. What's your thoughts, Wayne?
I think absolutely deservedly so. I do think that there are a lot of people who didn't like this because Jared Goff. We talk about boring, right? We're talking boring quarterbacks. Jared Goff is kind of a boring name. He came from LA, didn't really do much, goes to Detroit, which is a boring team to go to, and puts up boring 4,500-yard, 30-touchdown seasons back to back. I made the argument, if you look at his stats over the last 2 years, only Mahomes has been better. He's been better than Josh Allen. He's been better than Lamar Jackson. He's been better than, obviously, Joe Burrow got hurt, so that's why he's been better than him. You can't name 2 quarterbacks better than Jared Goff in the NFL the last 2 years. Absolutely deserved $50 million a year. I knew he was going to get it. We talked about it. 100%. I'm happy for him. I think he deserved it.
I think Detroit is on the up and coming, Wayne. Like, they paid Goff, they paid Amon St. Ra, they paid Sewell. Those are 3 key pieces to your team: a good wide receiver, a good quarterback, a good left tackle. That is, and then they got Jamar Gibbs. They are building the team in the right way, I think, and that's why they're winning all these games. Like, in Goff finally has a team that believes in him. Like, I don't think the Rams ever truly believed in him. They wouldn't have just got rid of him for Matthew Stafford if they really did,
I do, and I'm going to touch on another Lions thing in 1 second. We got some comments. I didn't throw them up during the show. I always miss Mike's comments. I feel bad. So Buckhead, the Broncos are boring when we're talking about the boring quarterback thing. He also has Steelers with Russ as a Super Bowl or bust. I agree with that. I mean, if they don't go, that's kind of where they're at. And then he has backup plan was Russ, so you offer them 6 picks. Why not offer the Packers that he's in with Rodgers?
I know. That's a good idea.
And then we have here, he says, you were saying not trying to bash Russ, but then throw him under the bus for 5 minutes. And then the last thing he had here was music's going to get copyrighted. I'm guessing he means the music in the background there. So appreciate Buck. I always feel bad that I don't get to his comments right away. But I do want to jump into the Lions. One more thing I wanted to ask you about the Lions here. With this big deal, what does this mean for Hendon Hooker? Because I do feel like he was drafted to replace Jared Goff when Goff's contract was up. And Hendon Hooker was a guy who was a front runner for the Heisman before he hurt his knee. Took him a full season to recover. He's fully recovered now. Is he trade bait? Does he get traded before the season starts?
That's a very good question, Wayne. But first, I want to apologize. I'm the one for the music snafu. I'm at Starbucks, and I didn't have my mic off. My apologies. I know Wayne could edit that out later. Sorry, everybody. But yes, I think he's in a similar situation as Michael Penix right now. Like, he could maybe start if Goff struggles. I don't really see Goff struggling. Or maybe he becomes trade bait. And I think Atlanta is sort of in that same position right now.
Well, I think the difference is that with Cousins' contract, it's a 2-year deal. I know it's 4, but it's really 2. And so you bring in Penix, and he kind of sits the bench like rookies used to do back in the day for 2 years. Then he gets to start. I think Penix is absolutely 100% starting year 3. There's no way Kirk Cousins is starting year 3 unless he wins a Super Bowl, but I don't think he will. With Hooker, it's like he was drafted 2 years ago because he was supposed to be year 3 starter. Well, now Goff just signed this new 4-year deal. So now you're talking, he's not going to sit the bench for 4 years. His rookie contract will be up. So I do think they have to look at teams who might be interested in Hendon Hooker. And unfortunately, they're going to end up getting probably a 6th-round pick for him.
I was just going to ask you that, Wayne. I was like, what do you think they could even get for him? Do you think another team would want him?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, for a 6th-round pick, because it's a low investment, but any team that is not sure about their quarterback, I think you have to look at teams like Carolina, right? And I love Bryce Young, by the way. I think Bryce Young is going to have a bounce-back year, but they're a team who might bring in that successor now just in case. Teams like that. I don't think anyone who drafted a quarterback this year will. The Raiders would be perfect for Hendon Hooker because, again, you're sitting behind Gardner Minshew for 1 or 2 years, and then you get the chance to start. You're still in that boat, though, where you've been sitting for 4 years, and like Penix, Hooker was a 24-year-old rookie.
Yeah, but do you think maybe after he sits for 4 years that maybe they'll just think he's a career backup at that point?
I don't know. He's one of those guys I'm rooting for. I don't know if he's ever going to get his chance. It may have sailed because of the fact that Jared Goff did play good and the Lions weren't expecting him to, but he did. And so one of those situations, Hendon Hooker just kind of sits the bench and, maybe he goes and plays in the CFL or the UFL and has a great career. You can go to the CFL and make a ton of money. Doug Flutie did. I'm rooting for Hendon Hooker because that knee injury really destroyed him. He should have been a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, but that torn knee up, he sat over a year recovering that, and that kind of killed his career.
But I think the CFL thing is a good call because there has players that have turned it around. Like we had a player in Denver, Chad Kelly, Jim Kelly's nephew, didn't work out here in the NFL. He went to Canada and he played for the Toronto Argonauts and he won like multiple Grey Cups, I think they're called, in CFL. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Doug Flutie went there and he won a bunch of multiples. So yeah, that's a still good option for guys like that. Or he could even if he doesn't get a job, he can be in the XFL. The UFL as they call it now.
Well, and now Chad Kelly is facing a suspension for sexually harassing, I think, a team trainer.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. I was like, I don't really know the details, but yeah, he's suspended now. I was just throwing an example out there.
Okay. No, Doug Flutie is a great example because Doug Flutie did start off in the NFL with the Patriots, I believe. Didn't work out, goes to the CFL. He won like 5 or 6 Grey Cups, was MVP of the CFL, comes back to San Diego, plays in Buffalo. He did have a little bit of an NFL career in his 30s, so it can happen. The other guy, Warren Moon. Warren Moon, as shameful as this may be, Warren Moon was told that, we're not going to have a black guy play quarterback. Like, that's how awful it was back then. So he goes to the CFL, lights it up, comes in. He's a Hall of Famer in the NFL.
Wayne, I'm glad you said that. I never knew that's why Warren Moon didn't get a shot. I just thought, it always amazed me. That guy threw the ball sorry for my explicit, but fucking awesome. And you're not going to put that guy in the NFL? That guy got a raw deal for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he still made the Hall of Fame. He got his yellow jacket, so it worked out in the end. But yeah, that's why he started off in the CFL.
But man, that just sucks. I didn't realize that the NFL was like that way back then.
Apparently, the CFL has always been less racist. I don't know.
Well, it's Canada. That makes sense. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. Same for our normal, usual 2-minute warning. I have one. Wayne has one. I forget who went first last time, but I'm going to let Wayno go first.
Oh, I don't have one. I thought you can go ahead and I'll just comment on yours.
Oh, okay. I thought you did have one. Okay, I do have. Okay, mine is. Mine's not football related. Mine is hockey related. And recently, the Colorado Avalanche, my hometown hockey team, they were really hot. They're in the second round of the playoffs, playing Dallas right now, and they recently just lost one of their key players, Valery Nichushkin. He had some drama last year during the playoffs. There really wasn't any details about it. He was put into the program, and this last incident, he failed a drug test. So now he's suspended again, and he's a key part of the team. It just really sucks because it hurts the team. It hurts him. It just, like, I really hope that whatever this addiction is doesn't take over him, because I've seen it happen. And ultimately, I just hope for the safety of this guy. Like, I really don't care that he's not going to be an Avalanche player anymore. I just want him to get some help. And also I feel bad for the team because they really needed this guy, and they're probably crushed now that he's gone, and we probably ain't going to go any further in the playoffs. So I just had to tell this little story.
Yeah, we always hope if people have an issue, if they have trouble, they can get the help that they need and better themselves and get right again. As far as the sport itself, I'm going to tell you a little thing. It goes like this. Hockey, sticks, and pucks. Show me hockey, a sport that I can't remember the end of it. But anyways, you guys get the idea. It's a sport that is not great.
Okay, Wayne doesn't like hockey, but you don't like a lot of stuff, Wayne, so that doesn't surprise me. But I hope Valery Nichushkin gets the help he needs. Go Avs.
Absolutely. I do hate hockey, and there are a lot of things I hate. So we can put hockey in it. So we got, let's see, child abuse, sexual harassment, racism, hockey, anchovies.
I think hockey and anchovies are the least of your worries, Wayno.
All right.
Good show, man. Party on, Wayne.
Hey, party on, Mark. Good show. Loved it. And can't wait to do this again next week.